iPhone and Apple and Google been so popular? Because they do the thinking for you. Everybody in this last generation doesn't want to do any critical thinking for itself. I want you to intuitively know what I want to buy, what I want to do. There's so much data being collected on everybody, and it's willingly given away. You know, like I said, my wife saw my BlackBerry. She says, Bill, you're getting old. You know, you're looking like an old guy. So why, you want me to color my hair? She goes, no, get rid of the BlackBerry. Get an iPhone. Well, the BlackBerry to me is a tool. Right? I'm not into the social media. Other than LinkedIn, I have no social profile. You know, what I do is what I do. But everybody here, I guarantee you, in ASEAN, they don't have the legacy telcos, but everybody's got a cell phone, and they're doing things, and they're giving away all their data.
So what's at stake if no one is paying attention already?
Well, you know, it's the old story. You want to lose your freedoms? You're giving them away. You know, I come from government, but I'm not a big fan that government knows my business or what they do. And the problem is, it's like, how do you catch a wild pig, right? You bring them into an area, you put a corn, put up one fence there, one leg of the fence. He sees it, but he likes the corn. Before long, you've got the whole thing enclosed in corn, and these wild pigs are now domesticated. That's what we're doing by giving away our freedom and our privacy each step of the way. It's incremental creep, and governments are controlling us because they know our data. Google, you can turn your phone off. Google's still monitoring and tracking you. You know that the Library of Congress, up until actually this Christmas, every Twitter you did has been archived at the Congress, Library of Congress. That's phenomenal. There's as much data last year that was aggregated than in all the world combined up until 2016. Think about that. How much of your life is actually out there?
Can I tap onto your experience then on advising probably similar groups of clients that Mohit's firm is involved in advising? And Mohit, can you also share some of your thoughts when you're speaking to the clients on their advisory? You know, what kind of risks are they looking at right now? And are they on the right page? Or have they, lagged so far behind that there's simply no way to catch up?
Right. I mean, as organizations transform to a more ecosystem-oriented place, whether it's for capacity or capabilities, for whatever respective ambitions they have, clearly the elements of risk do scale up as you move into the world of ecosystems. And these range from reputation risk to, depending on which industry you are in, credit risk, operational risk, and so on and so forth. And that's why, if you look through the narrative of organization structure of many large organizations, there was elements of a chief risk officer, but there was not a lot of attention paid on the digital risk that the world of ecosystem brings to them. And that's why you are starting to see a lot of thinking coming across the world of technology and the risk teams to say, what risks do these new ecosystems that we are partnering with, whether it's for inheriting capabilities, whether it's for distribution and so on and so forth, that they will bring to us, and how do we effectively manage them? And that requires a fundamental rethink around many of the existing policies that have been written to manage these risks. That requires a fundamental rethink around the levels of transparency that the two ecosystems need to have with each other. And this is a journey, journey in progress. Till there are one or two issues that surface, we'll all continue to learn and realize that, it's going to be a long journey, because the nature and construct of these partnerships and ecosystem is going to be very diverse. Have telcos known how to partner with consumer product companies? Have banks known how to partner with real estate businesses? And so on and so forth. So when you think about, an element like the whole mobility ecosystem, that impacts 13, 14 industries. So do mobility service providers have had the history of partnering with businesses in 13, 14 industries, large, medium, small, to build that entire mobility narrative? And that's why this is going to be a long learning journey for many.
Now, Bill, based on what you've seen, would you say that there is far more innovation occurring in the criminal sphere than there is in the legal open sphere?
Well, it's fundamental to remember something. The bad guys have all the money and no rules. The good guys have all the rules and no money. And so it gives them a big advantage. And they always know what they want to do. Some of the most creative people I ever met have been criminals. And for everything that we think that we're putting in front of them, they've already figured out how to game it. And again, we make it more complicated than it has to be. Remember the space race? My generation remembers the space race. In 1970 or 69, NASA very proudly says, hey, we did something better than the Russians. We spent $1 million, which is how much is that worth today, to develop a pen that writes in space, gravity-free. The Russian says, yeah, well, we can do better. 5-cent pencil and a pencil sharpener. So again, you don't have to take a machine gun to everything you do. And I think we overcomplicate things. It sounds good when you're selling it, but the bad guys, they understand the elements of crime. Everybody else understands technology. I want to get it out there. And if I can just say, I know if I asked you 2 questions, I probably won't see many hands go up, but I'll ask the questions if I may. How many people here know what smurfs are, or smurfing is? If you raise your hand if you know what smurfing is. Not a single hand went up. Okay. How many people know what structuring is? When I talk about structuring. Okay, nobody here had it. I spoke last year at the FinTech Finals in Hong Kong. These are all people promoting the best FinTech and technology that they're going to bring to the marketplace. I asked that question, about 300 people. One hand went up. And I said to them, you know what, I just asked you the basic DNA building block questions of modern money laundering. Right? And you guys didn't know what it is. And here you are entering the regulated markets with all your technology. You guys are so focused on what you want to sell that you don't understand what's the history, what's the legacy, why we have what we have. Smurfs, just so you know, those little blue guys in the cartoons, when there's so much cash generated by the cocaine trade in North America, the easiest way to get it into the banking system was to have hundreds of people going out and putting under $10,000 into the banks. Structuring is when you start aggregating it into 1 or 2 main accounts. You'll take 200 accounts, aggregating, you're structuring it. So if you want to develop software or some type of application for the market, you better understand the basic DNA of money laundering.
Now, Bill, just picking up on that, you said earlier you know where the smart guys are. Can you tell us geographically, sectorally, is there a distinction?
I don't think there's a distinction anymore. Some of the most adept hackers, the white hat hackers in the world today, are under 15 years of age, come from Pakistan, Iran, working for Google. One thing, North Korea has become very, very proficient. The Chinese, very proficient in the hacking. Their big data analytics isn't up to the speed of the Americans. The Americans have been working with big data for a lot longer and a lot more excelled at it, but the Chinese know how to hack. So I think different areas have their levels of expertise. But the next world war, won't probably be won or lost by the firing of a bullet. It'll be done by cyber. And all I have to do is shut down your electricity. What are you going to do when your dam opens up and floods out a whole area? What happens if ice stops or your water pump aren't working anywhere and your sewage and everything else? I don't have to fire a bullet to win a war.
There's a question that's come in. Let me rephrase it so that we can invite a response from both our guests here. How could a corporation or an organization that you are familiar with protect their data? Do we even stand a chance against hacking if the global organizations are unable to?
Okay, I'll take the lead on that. Listen, the vast majority of you, the most you're going to get is ransomware. The big banks are the ones who are going to attack. And they're probably not being attacked by state actors. State actors are after R&D, they're after technology. They're not there, other than North Korea, who has to make money. North Korea's got about 1,200, 1,300 hackers across the border in China in a big warehouse. It's going 24 hours a day doing cyber hacking. And one of the big ways they're making money is through gamers. It's not my generation, but a lot of people like playing games, and they'll drop $10, $20, $30 so they can make their garden bigger. Well, half of that money's probably going to North Korea because the gamers aren't selling those pieces of fertilizer. It's North Korea. And again, they've hacked into the system. So I think the reality is, will you be compromised if you're a major player? Will somebody try to compromise you? 100%. We're all familiar with email compromise fraud, where somebody hacks in, gets your name, tells your secretary, hey, send me $1 million, I need it. But that's not where the real heavy hit is. If I'm an anarchist, if I really want to disrupt things, I'm not a thief, I'm an anarchist, what happens if I hack into in the overnight repo market in the banks, and I hack the ledgers? And I don't steal anything, I just manipulate the ledgers. There goes your overnight borrowing market and your credit markets. So there's so many ways that you can be attacked and hacked, and what makes it dangerous. But I think, again, the only way to truly effectively defend yourself is to be constantly scanning your data and identifying attacks in real time, and then countering the attack by nullifying the threat. The problem that we have today is big banks. Imagine if I'm taking a punch at you every day, and every day you're a big bank and you're able to block it. But one day that punch gets through, and it puts you on your knees. That's the problem. So it's better that, okay, you know who kids are in the mom's basement hitting at you, you can ignore them. But when it comes to be a more sophisticated major player and they take a hit at you, you better punch back. And that is happening more and more, even if it's not advertised.
Yeah.
Now, in your advisory and consulting space, are you seeing the conversation and the concern focused on this area?
I think it's the new normal, right? That if you're in the business of ecosystems, you got to be clear that these things will happen at different points of time in your journey. But one interesting move we have seen some organizations explore is hire hackers to prevent hacking. Essentially make the play around getting a team of hackers and let them hack you, so that you discover where the breakages are, and then you kind of work towards it. But it is something that will happen to different organizations as you move more and more towards an ecosystem-driven organization.
But as you were alluding to, is something like that scalable for a smaller organization that is not an Apple or Google?
For sure, it's scalable, but it's for somebody the size of HSBC and the size of their enterprise, that's a huge ask to cover that whole enterprise. And the problem with a lot of these larger enterprises is they've grown by acquisition, not by organic growth. So that means they're adding on other systems. They're not quite speaking to each other, and so you lose a lot of that commonality. The other problem you have is, to address a problem, is you've got a lot of money invested into legacy IT systems. And it's a big expense to try to say that's not redundant. So what you're able to do, what people are doing on the larger enterprises, is let's look on an enterprise-wide basis, where is your area of concern? Let's just identify that, and let's just deal with that. You can still work with the rest of your enterprise.
As we close, I'm very curious, Mohit, what in your professional lifetime is one situation you would dearly love to see absolutely reversed?
Around the way the organizations are dealing with change, I think we have too many job titles with the alphabets between C and O. I think that's something I would like less of, so that we get people focusing on doing the right things, rather than carrying too many titles and creating siloed organization. Because the narrative for enterprises needs to change from command and control driven to an ecosystem driven enterprise. And that means less of these alphabets between the alphabet C and the alphabet O.
And Bill, for you?
I kind of agree with what Mehrotra just said. Like I said, there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and no pun intended, to make these things work. And the other thing that doesn't happen enough is there's not enough what I call random virtue testing, both of your people and of your systems. Everybody's scared of making a reportable event if they're a regulated entity. And that's part of the problem. The regulators shouldn't punish firms for self-identifying and self-reporting when there's either a human component that's caused a problem, or a mechanical or technical problem. And so it actually forces companies not to be too proactive, because they don't want to create a fine against themselves. And I think that's where the regulators have to play it a little smarter and encourage a more principle-based governance, whether it be cyber or money laundering or financial crime.
Bill and Mohit, we appreciate you bringing your expertise and your time to us today. Thank you.
Thank you. that you should consider. In all conversations, there are 3 parties to a conversation. I was saying this to Christine earlier, but it's the absolute truth. The person sending off the message, the person receiving the message, and the person listening in. So keep that in mind.
Thank you.